Hello, hello.
Hey, Wednesday, how you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you?
Excellent. So, new album Friday. How's it
Yeah,
feel? You're close to the finish line.
it's so close. It's finally here. After what seems like an eternity. We started, writing or we started recording this last November, but we've been writing for it since the beginning of the pandemic. So it's just felt forever, and I guess it kind of has been forever. So I always see the finish line there, knowing that the record's out on Friday. The reaction to it so far with the singles, image, the album cover has just been overwhelming. So I'm excited for people to hear what we spent all this time on.
Sure. Now, when you sit down to write songs, you said you started writing them in 2020. Do you
Mhm.
always go in with the process of writing a song all in one go, or do you just write pieces of music and see what fits together?
Yes, it's always for me always been pieces. Just because I write at odd time. I really wasn't on a schedule yet. So like when the pandemic kicked in and I knew we were going to be off tour for a while, I'm always sitting around playing guitar, or if I write an idea down or something like that. Um, so I had a couple of songs early on in the pandemic, like "Good Day to Be a Bad Guy." I think "Hideous." I'd been working on that one for a couple of years. I just was like, all right, I got the chorus. I know that's going to be good. And so those were kind of in pieces. And then like same thing with like the song "Hell Is Coming." That was wrote a couple months later. But once we got together last August and sat down and started putting all the songs pieces we had together. So it was me and my guitarist Ramon were the ones that wrote everything on the album. So he brought in his songs he had, I brought in my songs. We seen what worked, what didn't work, what stands out, what doesn't stand out, what sucks. And we sort of whittled it down to the songs you hear on the record. And that's kind of how it's made. We just try to write as much stuff as possible, and then we put it all together and pick the best from the worst.
Sure. So this is the Ninth Wednesday album, and the beauty of it is each album sort of has a bit of a theme, but each album stands on its own. And no matter what, you write from your personality at the time. So, what was your personality going into this album?
Oh, it was weird this time. I mean, I don't think my personality changed. Luckily, I was able to salvage, that during the pandemic. I mean, everybody had a horrible time during the pandemic, I think. But like for me, I lost my mom during that time. My nephew passed away. Alexi Liho passed away, and then 6 months later, we lose Joey. So it was I had a lot of that in my head that I normally don't have to even process. So this, that's what I was worried about. Is this record had those things affected what was going to come out on this record? And yeah, there was a lot of music I wrote that didn't make the album because it sounded like I was affected by that. But I didn't want to make a sad post-COVID record, and I wanted to make something that, this is the ninth Wednesday 13 record. It's got to be as good as the last one, or as good as the first one in my mind. And so that was sort of the mentality I went in. I wasn't going to let these situations destroy my spirit, even though it could have been. It felt like it was.
Sure. Now, everyone gets inspiration in different places. Where is the weirdest place that you've got an inspiration for a song?
Weirdest inspiration. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I've always lived inside of a television. I've always watched movies. So for some people go, oh, well, what'd you write this? I mean, like a song on our record, like Christine, like, what a weird story. It's a Stephen King novel that John Carpenter did the movie for, but just some people go, you were inspired by a killer car to write a song? Like, yes, I was.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if that's a good enough answer. I mean, I don't know. I get inspiration from all over the place. The new song "Good Day to Be a Bad Guy," that was inspired just by just something I said out loud and made myself laugh, and I wrote it down. And when the pandemic first kicked in, I live in Los Angeles, and it seemed in the U.S. that was the first state that did all the mandatory everything, lockdown, this and this. And I remember just turning the TV on, and it was, today in Los Angeles, there's now mandatory mask in everywhere. And I went, like, even in the bank? And I went, yep. And I went, it's a good day to be a bad guy.
Yep.
Or wrote that title down again, because I was just like, really, you can wear a mask into the bank now? Isn't that a little so yeah, I just, I found a little humor out of the madness with that. So yeah, that's where I draw inspiration from, is just from anything. Usually something that makes me laugh is the one that gets the win.
Sure. Speaking of the song, I love that horror punk edge to it. It actually really reminds me of Murderdolls, because I love Murderdolls. And I know prior to Joey's passing, there was some chatter about hopefully reforming. Is there any music from here that you sort of like, oh, that'd make a great Murderdolls song? And is there any old Murderdolls stuff that might see the light of day?
There's no old music. There's one track that the label wouldn't release a long time ago because it was too violent. But that was from the first album. I think I'm the only one that has a copy of it that I know of. But no, but like you said, that song "Good Day to Be a Bad Guy." When I wrote that song, like I said, it was the very beginning of the pandemic. I actually reached out to Joey and said, "Hey man, the world's shutting down. I don't know how long this is going to last. You want to get together and do this again?" And he was like, "Wednesday, that sounds really cool. I've got a couple things I'm working on right now. Let me get back to you." And I just kept writing for the record. But that was a song I wrote and went, well, if this isn't a Murderdolls song, I don't know what is. I mean, it's 100. It coulda, woulda, shoulda been. And right before he passed, like I said, I was just I was sort of thinking like, man, I was like that would have been the song. So at least we were able to record it for this record. You hear the influence in that.
Yeah.
I mean, that just Joey would have been very proud of that song. He would have loved it. And you can hear it. It's just got the Murderdolls spirit in it,
It really does. I can imagine hearing Nowhere and then hearing that straight after it.
Yeah. Well, we do that live on my tour right now. So so yeah, that's why I felt the same way. I want to hear those songs back to back, and we play those songs back to back. And it just goes over, and people can hear that because yeah, for me, like over the years, I've changed with my records, my sound. I don't want to stick to one thing, but to go back to a song like that, I think fans are going to eat it up. This will be their favorite song.
Excellent. Now, you're a big horror fan. Has there ever been a movie that was just too gnarly for you and you had to turn it off?
Every once in a while, there's something weird. Like I wasn't really into I Spit on Your Grave. That's a little too much of Last House on the Left, even though I'm not a big fan of that movie either. I thought it was I don't know, it freaked me out as a kid. I didn't really like it. But yet when I'm saying that, but I sat through Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is probably one of the weirdest, messed up things I've ever seen. And it's one of my favorites. So yes and no, it just depends on the mood I'm in. But for the most part, I can make it through most horror movies. I don't really like to watch. I know that back when I was growing up, they had the Faces of Death movies that were like real scenes of death, and then they started getting more extreme and coming out with Traces of Death, and and then so those kind of things I'm not really into watching at all. But yeah, there's a couple horror things that just aren't in my world, but that's all right.
And you're also like a huge collectible guy. What's your favorite collectible, or what's your rarest collectible?
I mean, the two main things I collect the most of, that I actually have one room in my house just dedicated. I mean, it looks like a toy museum. It's the G.I. Joe Real American Hero line from like '82, and He-Man Masters of the Universe. That was the two when I was a kid. That was brand new to me. I got Castle Grayskull on Christmas morning from Santa Claus in like 1984. So that was and that's still, that's my fountain of youth. If I'm at home, I'm in a bad mood, I go into that room and it's just like, oh, I can sit there and just, I'm surrounded by it. I have a full He-Man carpet in the floor. It's nothing but all the action figures. Like it looks like you're in a cartoon when you walk in. And I've got a lot of rare stuff from that. I just picked up an original Skeletor's Snake Mountain in the box on the last tour. That was an awesome find for me. So, but I think probably one of the most rare things, I'm not sure how rare it is. I know it's the oldest thing I have. I have a Herman Munster doll from 1969 that was in a catalog that you had to order, and he has a pull string. And
Wow.
yeah, and the strings broke out of it, but he's still in really good shape. I think you can still find them. I just don't know how. But that's probably my oldest toy. But dude, I've got everything from, the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark play set. I've got just so much stuff. Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon toys. Yeah, there's no end to it. If I like the movie, I got the toy, and if they made it.
That's cool. As a kid that was born in the 70s, so I was into the He-Man stuff too. Funnily
Yeah,
enough, the new album cover reminds me of what, like, if they remade He-Man now, like Grayskull. Like,
that's exactly what it is, and a lot of people have gotten it, and a lot of people don't. You get it.
yep,
That is Wednesday 13's Castle Grayskull. That is Snake Mountain in my style, and that's what I told the artist. And I was literally in my He-Man room at the house, and I was looking at the artwork because I have the original like Fright Zone. I have all this stuff and all the posters, and that artwork looked like album covers back then to me.
yeah,
I mean, I had the posters on my wall, and I was like, that's what we should go with. I haven't did an album cover like that. So, you see Castle Grayskull, I see Castle Grayskull. Some people have told me they see King Diamond in it, and I with that little chair, and I'm like, whoa, okay, that's cool too. So it gets best of both worlds. But my main goal with that album cover is the cover is, not pat myself on the back. It's awesome. My artist killed it
yep,
on it. And it's the kind of record that if I was going to walk in a record store back in the day when there were record stores and there was vinyl,
yep.
and you saw that album cover, you would hold it and you would stare at it and be like, I have to know what's inside of this. And that's what I try to do with maybe that's a long lost art these days, people making cool album covers. But for me, that's something that will, I got to step it up next time. Where will I go next? Where do I go?
Yep.
That's the challenge.
That album for me was Dressed to Kill. What was the album for you when you walked into the record store, like hadn't heard of the band, and you went, "I'm buying that just on the cover"?
Oh man, I mean, Kiss pretty much killed it. I remember, I mean, it wasn't me like, I remember my brother would come home with records from the record store. I didn't live really anywhere near there was a record store, but I remember him having Number of the Beast was one of the first ones that I saw and went, what is this? And I remember my brother, when my parents left, he had this gigantic stereo system. I don't think they even make them this big anymore. It was like $1,000 system from like 1982. So you imagine, I mean, you could have powered a concert with it.
Yep.
Parents would leave and he put on Number of the Beast, and we just sat down in front of the speakers, and I thought I just walked into hell. It was, I'm from the Bible Belt. My mom was terrified of that stuff. And so just looking at that album cover freaked me out. So that was one, and again, I'm not a giant Iron Maiden fan, but just talking about a cover that just grabbed you and just went, holy shit, and the same thing, my brother bringing home Kiss Destroyer. I think that's probably even more of one that I went toward because they look like comic book characters.
Yep.
And my brother had the dolls, so I got all the hand-me-downs. So I had
Lovely.
I had a half dress Paul Stanley, a missing boot off of Gene, but I had them, so yeah, those are the album covers that stick out in my head. There's two, probably Destroyer and Number of the Beast.
Perfect. Now back to your album. Who is actually playing drums on this album?
A friend of ours named Daniel Fox. He came in. We parted ways with our drummer Kyle, who played on the last two records, and we parted ways on good terms. He's still like one of our best friends, and but we, last minute we were like, all right, who are we going to get to play on this album? And we had just completed the tour in the state before the pandemic, and went home, and this guy Daniel was out with the band Dope, and he was working for Static X, and we were touring with him all year, all through Australia, Europe, and he was always hanging out on our bus instead of hanging out with his own band. And he was a great drummer, and I hit him up. I was like, "Can you want to come out here and track these drums?" And So he's like, yeah. So that was it. And then we did the earlier tour with him this year, but he had other commitments with Dope and his other stuff. So he went back to that. And so yeah, that was just that's the first album I've had in a while where I just had basically a session drummer for it.
Great. And you've got a different drummer touring at the moment, don't you?
Yeah, we picked up a new guy, or new to us, a guy named Mike Dupke, who he's a Los Angeles guy. I live in California now, and he and I had played together at some it was like a open jam night where bands get together, and he and I did a Wasp song together because he was in Wasp for 10 years. He played on 3 Wasp albums. And I'm a huge Wasp fan, so I was excited to jam with this guy. And I remember we played the show, and I was like, I want to remember that guy's name, and if I ever got to call a guy. And when it came time to get a guy for tour for this, his name popped back up in my head again, and I was like, I don't know, something's drawing me toward this guy. And we got together with him at the end of August, and he fits into our pack just like one of us. He's the same age bracket, likes the same movies, worships Kiss, and it didn't hurt that he was in Wasp, another one of my favorite bands. So he wins.
So this is a bit of a hot topic in music at the moment. Bands using laptops and tracks. So like Falling in Reverse actually had to cancel a show recently because their laptops didn't arrive at the venue. How do you feel about that? My mind is, I don't mind if there's like Alice Cooper uses like ambient noise and backgrounds and intros on tape, which he's done since the 70s. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But how do you feel about a band basically getting up and running their show on a laptop?
I've seen this more than that's not a new thing to me.
Yeah.
I've been on tour with bands and their laptop broke and they wouldn't play the show. Being, a musician for all these years and what I've done, in 2015 was the first time that I used a keyboard track because our album had keyboards on it. And I started getting familiar with the technology of doing that. And we did it for a while, but only, like you said, the Alice Cooper stuff, the ambient atmosphere, like, our intro to the record. It's our segues for our songs, but it wouldn't ruin our show, if we didn't have it. If I said, hey, you don't have that ambient sound of a bunch of bats flying behind you. Okay, well, I can still play the song tonight. So, I guess my reaction, I feel sorry for bands that have relied on that for their music. And to me, it's just, I'm from a different world. I'm not going to beat up on anybody if that's, music has changed so much now. And I don't want to sound like an old man going, back in my day, but back in my day, it was real players. And, so I'm still a big fan of all the old school ways of doing things. I'm not against technology. We have a laptop that runs our intro, our outro, our segues through the whole show. And we had a show 3 or 4 times on this tour where we couldn't get it patched up right and it didn't work. So what do? I said, fuck it. It didn't change the show. It just, it took that little ambient thing away from it, but it didn't ruin our show. So I guess the more thing, I feel sorry for anyone that has to rely on that. That must suck if you can't play a show if that much of your production is on a track, because at that point, why don't you just play your CD and just get on stage and hop around to that?
Exactly. Now, what are your memories of Gunfire 76 with a mutual friend of ours, Rob Hammersmith?
Oh yeah, Rob, the man, the human metronome. Dude, that guy's in the pocket, and I'm so glad to see him still with Skid Row coming back with what a vocalist that guy is. Holy cow. A lot of people don't know, before I get into Gunfire, but Rob was in the drums. They played drums on the touring lineup of that. And honestly, if he wouldn't have got the Skid Row gig, I would have asked him to be in. I think I did ask him to be in Wednesday 13, but he had the Skid Row gig. Yeah, man, Gunfire 76 was very short-lived, but it was so necessary. And me being where I am today and what I do, because prior to starting Gunfire 76, I had Wednesday 13, one of our last tours we did in 2009, we went and supported Hanoi Rocks in Japan. And I got to see them play every night for 2 weeks. One of my favorite bands. And I just couldn't get over their musicianship and just the players they were. And at this time, Wednesday 13 was a 4-piece. I was still playing guitar. And every night I walked off stage and I just didn't I felt like, I mean, Hanoi Rocks, you can't compete with them, but I didn't feel on the musical quality level of what that was. I'd been doing this punk rock thing. So when I kind of quit doing Wednesday 13 and did that project for that, and I focused on kind of what I witnessed with Hanoi Rocks. I found some different players, and I tried to step up my musicianship on stage, on stage, way I moved, way I present myself. I had to get used to not having a guitar, which was weird,
Yep.
But it was such a great thing. It made me a way better front guy, and it was the perfect practice set up for that second Murderdolls. Because by the time that second Murderdolls came out, I had the eye of the tiger. I was ready to rock, and so Gunfire and like I said, the second Murderdolls as well. Just working with Joey again, I've always learned. Every time we work together, I learned something new from him, and I don't know. I think the musical quality stepped up, as far as musicianship stepped up around that time. So, but yeah, when I was saying, Skid Row's vocalist guy, a lot of people don't know Skid Row was my, when Slave to the Grind came out, that was my favorite album. And I listened to Skid Row, and I loved Alice Cooper at the time. And I remember when I first started trying to sing in a band around that time, was 1991, 92. Those are the two guys that I loved. And so when you hear my voice now, and you hear the way it's Sebastian Bach and Alice Cooper smashed together, because all my high notes and registers and stuff I've been able to do over the years, that's all Sebastian and Blackie Lawless influenced, but the snarl and the sarcasm is the Alice Cooper. So to hear Skid Row come back, and after all their years with it's just a guy who's got pipes, man. It's amazing. So I'm really happy for them.
The whole album's fantastic. Wait till you hear it.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. Hopefully, man, we can do some shows with Skid Row. I think they would work. I know Rachel's a fan of the band. So fingers crossed, maybe we'll do some cool stuff with them later on. I would love to do a show with them.
Yeah, that's actually a Skid Row Gold album over my shoulder.
Yeah. Which record?
The debut one.
Oh, awesome. Excellent.
Yeah. It's actually Sebastian's.
Oh.
All right, as we close off today, there's been chatter of an Australian tour. Anything locked in?
Nothing locked in. But yeah, I heard about it last week. We were presented an idea for the end of January. So it's not that far away. So actually I'm gonna get on the phone with my agent this week and find out where that was. It's a really interesting offer. It's it'll be I think it's going to be a co-headline tour, but just the bill is, you'll love it.
Yeah, I think I know which one it is. So
it's exciting to even get an offer like really? Okay, that would work for me.
Well, we'll see. That makes me happy, because I've seen you a bunch of times, taken photos of you a bunch of times, like on the acoustic tour and things like that. So
great.
Love to see you guys again, and especially take photos again. It's always a blast. So as we finish up, anything you want to leave all your Aussie friends with?
We're coming for you. Horrifier's out this week, and you're going to see us sooner than later, and we're gonna have your insides out.
Thanks, Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your tour. I know you're on the road at the moment. We'll see you soon.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you so much.
See you, man.
See you soon.
Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.